Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pitt Mailbag Show from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, where your hosts, Chris Carter and Stephen Thompson, your Pitt beat reporters here. And it's time to take your questions here on the show as we do every Tuesday. Be sure to tune in on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this channel to get all of these Tuesday episodes as well as all of the daily content that comes out from all of our Pittsburgh sports writers, including our post-game recaps that you can find right here on the show after big Pitt football games and Pitt basketball games. But we have a lot to break down here, Stephen. Basketball season is starting to kick into high gear. Football season is pretty much wound down. The Panthers now have a final record of 7-5 after their 7-0 start. We will get into all of that because a lot of you guys had questions about that. But we got to lead with this Pitt basketball team. And Cody emailed us the question. I forgot to put via email in this, but Cody asks, the ACC has been bad as a whole in non-conference play. Should Pitt be worried about that impacting their March Madness hopes, and puts in parentheses again? Because as we know, last year Pitt had 22 wins, had some impressive wins, and they were left off because of their non-conference strength of schedule, but ultimately because they're in the ACC. Steven, do you see that happening this year, despite their 7-1 start and everyone talking about how good the non-conference strength of schedule is right now?
Yeah, well, I think the good news is that Pitt has done a lot of really good work for itself in the non-conference schedule itself. That was another one of the big reasons why Pitt got left out of the NCAA tournament a year ago, but doesn't seem like that'll be the case again this year. It's not just that they've won important games in the non-conference schedule already, beating Ohio State and LSU and West Virginia, but those teams look to be in pretty decent shape. I mean, outside of LSU, you got to figure that West Virginia, after beating Gonzaga, and I think notched another pretty impressive win. I forget over who down in the Bahamas during the week of Thanksgiving. That they look like an NCAA tournament team right now. Ohio State certainly seems that way as well. So that'll go a long way. Pitt obviously can't, tank in the conference part in the ACC schedule, but I think because of the way that they played in the non-conference schedule, if they are a team that's finishing in the top 3 or 4 of the ACC. That'll be enough for them to earn a bid to the NCAA tournament. You might need 1 or 2 more wins than they've gotten over the past couple of years. So maybe instead of, I think they had 12 ACC wins last year, you might need somewhere closer to 13. 12 might be pushing it a little bit. But Joe Lunardi released a new set of bracketology today. He has the Panthers as a 5 seed. So that gives them some wiggle room over the course of ACC play. And the flip side of that is, as the ACC starts to look worse, it looks like there will be some easy wins to be had at the bottom of that schedule. So you have to feel good about the Panthers being able to stack wins like that. You're going to have to take one probably off of North Carolina. I'm not going to say Duke necessarily, but Louisville, Wake Forest, those teams kind of at the top of the league right now. You're going to have to steal a couple from them to bolster that resume a little bit. But for the most part, I think there'll be plenty of bad teams that they can beat up on to bolster a resume, the bulk of which will be centered around what they've done in the non-conference already in November and the early part of December.
Yeah, I remember, you go back, a couple of years when they made the tournament. I think it was Northwestern who they beat up on early in the season, and Northwestern ended up being a really good team, and that was a big thing that played in their factor in making the tournament that year. You now have LSU, which is looking solid right now in the net. West Virginia, which it's so crazy that going into last season, you would have thought West Virginia would have been a boost. Going into this season, you would have thought they would have been holding you down, but it's the complete opposite this year. Mm-hmm. West Virginia's had so many upsets already. They're high up in the net, and they're a home quad 1 win. Like I did not ever calculate that as being a possibility for Pitt. And then of course you got Ohio State on the road. I mean, as long as Ohio State doesn't completely crumble, that will remain a quad 1 win regardless of what how the season plays out. That's you have 3 good wins already that can account for that. So I think that's a really good sign for Pitt. To be honest, to answer Cody's question, the only way it would impact their March Madness hopes would be if you feel like they should be, a 2 or a 3 seed and they get a 5 seed, and And then that kind of stuff will work itself out over time. Pitt's ranked number 18 in the AP poll this week, but like if you look at the net rankings, they're number 5, and it's because of their quad 1 wins. If they keep it up this season, if they don't drop too many bad games to lower hanging ACC teams, and they finish strong in this non-conference, they got Mississippi State. That's a big game this Wednesday. If they win there, I think it further boosts their resume. But if they're able to avoid those pitfall games and they go in, like you said, maybe take some from North Carolina, if they get a win over Duke, like that, they'll not only be fine, we'll be talking about, what bracket they want to be in instead of just them making a bracket. And it's been a very long time since we've had a discussion like that about Pitt basketball.
Yeah, we'll definitely be looking, I think, the way things are trending now, we'll be looking more at seeding and how the ACC was respected in that sense versus, okay, is Pitt even going to make the field? I don't think we're looking at a trip to Dayton this year again, Chris. Unfortunately, I know we enjoyed our time there a couple of years ago.
Absolutely. Let's move it along. We're going to flip between football and basketball today. Andy hits us via email, and Stephen, he hits us up about his piece that you wrote. He says, I'm sorry, I don't like any part of Pat Narduzzi saying this year was a success. You just can't lose 5 straight to close out the season. Am I crazy? Well, Andy, you're emailing us, so obviously you are crazy, but crazy in a good way. But in all seriousness, Stephen, you wrote about this, and it was Pat Narduzzi's quotes at the end of the Boston College game. Of course, Pitt finishing the season 7-5 with 5 straight losses. As Andy puts here, is Andy crazy for not liking Pat Narduzzi saying that? You and I talked a little bit about this after the game, but now we've had more time to kind of sink in, let it settle, and look around all of college football after that.
Yeah, Andy isn't crazy for not being happy about that. We talked about that in our post-game show after that Boston College game. I don't think it was the right thing for Pat Narduzzi to say, but I'm not sure he was wrong either. I think it's easy to forget that they won 3 games last year, that we were talking about Pat Narduzzi maybe being on the hot seat a little bit going into last year. And the way that this past season unfolded, I think colors a lot of how people are going to remember this season. They're going to remember the 5-game losing streak more than the 7-game winning streak, which is just kind of a timing thing. And, you don't get any credit for doing it all with a bunch of injuries, but I think those certainly played a factor as well. It's a bit of a cop-out answer, but whether this season was a success or not is really going to be dependent on what they do next year and what they do this offseason retaining players, because I think the talent certainly took a step up this year, or the level of talent on this team certainly took a step up. The level of coaching, I think, is better on the offensive side of the ball as well, even if that didn't exactly manifest itself over the final few weeks of the year. So I think they made some improvements. Obviously, the most notable one is going from 3 wins to 7 wins. But, obviously that close to the year was disappointing. I don't think you're crazy for maybe being upset with Pat Narduzzi for saying that. But at the same time, you and I are able to look at it a little bit more objectively and a little bit more plainly. And success feels like a strong word, but they definitely improved. So if that was all you were hoping for out of this year, which a lot of people would have taken back in August or July, then I think you would consider it a success in that sense.
Which is crazy. I predicted a 7-5 season. I just didn't predict it to go this way. And to your point, and getting into what Andy's saying here, if you go back to the 2020 season, they finished 6-5, but they finished with 3 straight wins at the end of the season, and people were like, okay, maybe there's something there. And then the next season you win the ACC championship. And so it makes the 2020 season look not all that bad. Even though, 6-5, is actually, one of Narduzzi's, not like, I think it might be in the bottom half of his records. As far as like there's 3-9, which is a bad record. He had 5-7 and then 6-7. So it was his 4th worst record of his, 10-year career? 10 years? 10 years. This is 10 years now. Yeah. So that was his 4th worst record of that time, and it didn't matter as much because of what they did after. So to your point, it's going to be about how they build off of this, and also what do they learn from it? Because I think early on you found success, and then that success withered away. Was it because of the injuries on the offensive line, and how do you address it? And if it carries over, it could be the thing that might be like, all right, well, maybe this just iteration of this program needs to be cleaned up a little bit. But I think right now it's I get Pitt fans being upset, but the reality is, again, you won 7 games after winning 9. You showed that 3-9 was a bump. It was a bump in the road, not going to be the new trend. And yes, it's not another 9-win season. It's not another 11-win season. But it's back to where Pat Narduzzi had been for the most part in his career, where he's above 500, giving you competition on solid years, and he'll have a big spurt here and there, like he did in 2021 and 2022. Let's move along back to basketball. Peyton emailed us. Amsal Delalic looked like he had a rough first start against Ohio State. Will they bench him for Zach Austin after he hit 5 3-pointers and that game winner? Steven, there was a lot of excitement for Amsal Delalic. We were able to break it that he was going to start in that game while we were out there, and I think there needs to be some grace for getting a guy starting his first game in major college basketball and seeing how things have played out. But when you look at what Amsal Delalic brings to the table, it's clear Jeff Capel wants that third starter. Your 4 starters that you're going to get: Cam Corn, Guillermo Diaz-Graham, Ishmael Leggett, and then Jalen Lowe. 2 forwards, two smalls, and you have that guy in between. Do you want a small forward? Do you want another guard? And it's clear, it seems like Jeff Capel is prioritizing, like with starting Damian Dunn there, he wants another guy that can handle the ball, that can drive, that can bring it up, that can help with as far as driving and attacking and getting putting the ball on the floor. And if Amsal Delalic is that guy, that makes sense. But do you buy into the idea that maybe there's something to having Zach Austin come off the bench for Pitt, or should they just stop playing around and make him the starter after how well he played against Ohio State?
No, I kind of think that they are going to give Delalic a little bit more run, allow him to kind of integrate himself a little bit more. Like you said, I mean, a rough first start, but this is a guy whose preseason was kind of stunted by that hand injury. So not totally there, I think, in that, that's along with all the natural developments that he's going to have to make coming over from Bosnia and playing major college basketball for the first time. I don't think Jeff Capel's given up on him. And I think he does really like to have that kind of 6th man who's a starting quality guy coming off the bench. And part of me thinks, with Austin, kind of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, he's playing really well off the bench. He's really comfortable in that role. He's able to kind of see the game from the bench to start. And then, once he kind of understands what the team needs in that moment, able to deliver it, whether protection or, some more physical defense against bigger wings on the perimeter, or, that 3-point shooting, which is really interesting. Shout out to George Michalowski over at Pittsburgh Sports Now, who posted a bunch of interesting stats about how Austin is shooting better on contested threes than contested catch and shoot threes than he is wide open ones. So I think you don't want Austin thinking more about what he needs to do. So I expect them to, when they go down to Mississippi State tomorrow night, to leave Delalic in the starting lineup and bring Austin off the bench. And it really is all about who they close with and who ends up playing more of those minutes. If Delalic doesn't have it on a given night, if Austin doesn't have it on a given night, that's going to dictate how the lineups play out throughout the game. But at least for the starting lineups, which I think Jeff Capel would tell you don't really matter all that much, they're going to keep Delalic in there and bring Austin off the bench still.
And now you can also throw in Papa Conte as another person that's going to be rolling it off the bench with the way that he played. Jeff Capel acknowledging that as much. And Jeff Capel also saying that, Zach Austin worked a lot on his catch and shoot ability. I think that plays a big part of it. It's more consistent for him. So yeah, that's a weapon Pitts wants to use. But like you said, they want to keep that rotation, and starting is kind of in name only thing for certain guys. Whereas, you have to start with Jalen Lowe and Ishmael Leggett with this offense. You want Cam Corn on the floor. But for guys like Guillermo, Amsal, Zach, Papa, I think that they'll rotate in throughout the year. When Damian Dunn comes back, he'll be as well there. But I think it's a really good sign that they have this kind of a rotation that we can even talking about that can give Pitt some answers in different areas.
Yeah, definitely. They got so much deeper, I think, just by the way that Papa Conte and Zach Austin played in that. I mean, Austin, I think, has been putting together a nice season, but with Damian Dunn out, being able to have Conte to fill some minutes, and given the way that Cam Corrin's kind of struggled with foul trouble and the way Guillermo Diaz-Graham went down in that Ohio State game, really critical for them to have that depth and to be able to discover a few more guys who are usable. Brandon Cummins has also given you some good minutes, even if he's not, stuffing the stat sheet or scoring at a really high volume. He knows what he's doing, and he plays with a lot of energy. So, during this stretch, it's been interesting to see how much deeper Pitt has gotten, just kind of finding out who's ready for prime time coming off the bench.
Absolutely. Our final question comes from Allison, switching back to Pitt football. Bowl season's still coming up. Pitt's most likely going to be in a bowl game here with 7 wins. But Allison wants to know, what are Pitt's Pitt football's biggest needs heading into the transfer portal? Stephen, I feel like part of this can't be answered yet because we got to see who Pitt football keeps from the transfer portal, because that's always the story every year. They've already lost a few players to the transfer portal, but no super duper names just yet.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who ends up leaving. A couple guys who ended up, I think, being backups by the end of the year did leave. A defensive lineman, a center, a deep reserve corner. The way I look at it right now, I mean, assuming that there aren't really any major losses that we can't really anticipate, I'd say looking at Konate Mumpfield leaving, you might need another receiver, maybe more of a bigger, more physical guy. Unless, you think, I don't think it needs to necessarily be a number 1 receiver, just given the way that Kenny Johnson closed the season. I think he's got a ton of talent and could take another big leap forward next year. But I think you need running back depth as well, given that, you expect Roddy Hammond to move on. Desmond Reed gets banged up a couple of times. Daniel Carter's moving on, things of that nature. So I think you need a little more depth there. You'd probably look for, on defense, a veteran safety, a backup middle linebacker, and maybe a defensive end. I don't think the needs on defense are nearly as pressing as what you need up front on the offensive line.
That's where I'm going.
Yeah, I'll let you talk about that a little bit more. But I think for the most part, you're looking for not necessarily top line guys, but some backups who can give you some depth and help ensure you against some of those injuries. Whereas, I think, as you're going to talk about, you need some guys who are starting caliber up on the offensive line.
Look, Pitt's offense fell apart because of its offensive line. And Eli Holstein is not free of blame there. He made plenty of mistakes. But oftentimes when you need to balance a young quarterback, you do it with a strong run game. And Desmond Reed, I don't think Desmond Reed fell off. I think that this offensive line did not open up nearly enough holes this year. They let up way too much pressure this year. It led to Eli Holstein seeing ghosts at times. They need a better group, just straight up. There's no and you're not going to fix it all in one go. You're not going to, get everybody right. But here's the thing. I remind people, sometimes on an offensive line, it can take just 2 guys to make everyone else that much better. If you get 2 anchor type players, a good offensive tackle, a good center, a good guard, and just pair them, they can make everyone else better around them. That's what Jimmy Morrissey really did for Pitt a few years ago when he was being a leader on the Kenny Pickett teams. I think that's what Pitt is missing right now. They need a guy who can kick a lot of butt on the O-line, and they need another person who could be a solid contributor there. Marcus Minor was a guy they brought in from the transfer portal a few years ago. Turned out to be a great addition for this offensive line. It is something they can absolutely do, but it's something that they have to get right this time around, because if they go into the next season with a similarly poor performance offensive line, Eli Holstein is going to be running for his life. Desmond Reed is not going to be able to hit holes, and everyone's going to know exactly how to attack Pitt from game 1. It has to be addressed. I'm saying O-line. That is what Pitt football needs this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Above all else. And it's not just, a starting caliber guy. I mean, you need some backups too, because this offensive line has been a meat grinder for the past 3 seasons, really. So you not only need guys who can start, but as we've seen, there are no excuses for the injury bug now. You know that it's going to happen, so you need depth as well.
Get depth. Agreed there on all counts. We thank you all for always sending us your messages, even coming off of a holiday weekend with Thanksgiving being last week. Thanks everyone for tuning into the Pitt Mailbag Show from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Stephen Thompson, as always, answering your questions. Be sure to email us your questions or tweet at us or hit us up wherever you find us, whether it's on Blue Sky or anything like that. Thanks again for tuning in. We're going to have more throughout the week. Pitt basketball players talk Tuesday afternoon. And then, of course, Pitt basketball plays Mississippi State this Wednesday. That'll be a big game. Another quad one win opportunity there. We'll give you all our thoughts here in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com for all our written work. We'll see you then right here.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.